But at some point, we have like so much installed in several countries that we're like just curtailing the peaks in the summer. And then in order to actually use the renewable energy more efficient and reach 80% or 90% renewable penetration, I think the hybrids are the solution.
Hybrid power plants are becoming more and more an integral part of the energy transition for obvious reasons. The combination of PV and storage allows to harmonize generation with consumption. Further, the combination with wind allows to reduce costs by sharing infrastructure and taking advantage of the complementary generation profiles of sun and wind. The crucial point, though, is a lack of appropriate policies to fully use the potential of hybrid power plants. Time to dedicate a full episode to the topic. Stay tuned for an update on hybrid power plants. Welcome yet again to our yearly special mini-series of the Smarter E podcast, recorded live here in Munich during the Smarter E conference and exhibition 2024. We made sure to get some of the most interesting international experts and industry representatives and talk to them about the most exciting trends and developments while creating the renewable energy system of the future. Now, once again, I was able to grab a hold of one of the many international experts that are running around the exhibition area at the Smarter E Europe. The exhibition area in Munich is filled to the brim. There is not one hall left that hasn't been occupied by the Smarter E Europe. Now, I actually managed to talk to an expert of Chile who, funnily enough, ended up working for a German company, ABO Energy. Felipe Narbona is a renewable energy engineer working as a team leader for hybrid energy systems and battery storage. Of course, it happens that ABO Energy excels in this area. They have currently around 23 gigawatt of renewables, 20 gigawatt of green hydrogen, and 10 gigawatt of battery projects in their pipeline. Very excited to have him in the podcast. Welcome, Felipe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation. Happy to talk about the hybrids benefit. Let's give it a try for sure.
As we speak, it's still the first day of the Smarter E Europe. How do you enjoy it so far?
A lot of enjoying talks with partners, investors, and of course integrators of batteries. The topic of hybrids is on the brim here in the industry, and everyone is interested. So it's been fun so far.
That's good to hear. Now, talking of which, in Germany there was just a kickoff of the new legislation for solar energy, which also included a couple of changes for storage system. Does this already have an effect on large-scale hybrid power plants?
It's a really interesting question. I think like you're referring to the solar packet ions. So for me, at the beginning, we need to explain how the batteries can be integrated with renewables. The battery needs to be gone on the same land as the PV. So if we do this, the solar packet ions have like three major benefits for hybrid projects. The first one is a bit obvious, but in the previous legislation, you have the opt-in option, and then it's changing to an opt-out. Let me explain what it means. Basically, the previous German federal state had to explicitly designate disadvantaged regions. So the land was designated as EEG possible. Right? And now, instead of like designated EEG possible, they need to go out and say, this land is EEG not possible. So this opened the possibilities on how the land is searched for certain projects. It affects PV, but also the batteries, right? So the second one, I think, is the most important, especially for battery storage. The main setup before is the battery can only charge from the renewable energy asset. And now they're giving an option to turn on between option 1 and 2.
And just for the listeners who are not German, EEG is the renewable energy law that has been effective in Germany for a couple of years already, really laid the foundation for a lot of developments, but also needs some revision here and there. So please continue, Felipe.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, the EEG and the Marktprämie, a premium on the market of the EEG when you're installing hybrids, it was a protection for PV plants or innovation plants, right? And then now, before, because you can only charge from the renewable energy, you cannot harvest the full potential of an hybrid. So now the law is changing with the solar packet ions to making available 5 change a year. So you can be operating 2 months only charging from renewable, and then another 2 months charging from the grid and charging from renewables also. And this open possibilities to create arbitrage and access new markets for the battery. So basically what you can do, you can have like 5 changes a year in these operational modes. Before, the law was really restrictive, and now it's opening the doors for battery operation in a more efficient way.
So just break it down for me quickly so I understand fully how that works. That means I have to alternate between a month with renewables and then a full month with grid, or can I mix it during a period?
So you can mix it, basically. But basically during the summer, we have a lot of solar generation that is not matchable with the demand that we have in the German grid. So sometimes the price goes down and really almost negative or negative sometimes. And then you're losing your PV peak during the summer. During these times, you can charge the battery with this loss of energy and then still be protected by the EEG and the Marktprämie. And then during the winter, when the price of solar is not achieving its full potential, you can switch to a mix operation. You can charge from renewables, or you can charge from the grid, optimizing financially your hybrid asset.
Now, when you say charging from the grid, does it mean all available energy in the grid? That means gas, that means nuclear, that means coal, or just renewables from the grid?
That's one thing that is really something that is happening in the grid. When you have the energy in the grid, it's just the grid. It's really hard to separate it, right? So the thing is, the battery can use the grid while charging. You have one market that is called FCR. That is symmetric. So you need to provide charging capabilities from the grid, and discharging is when the flexibility of the grid has a problem on the symmetry. And then the battery helps to try to solve it. So even in the grid that you're saying as all the energies, the batteries are needed to stabilize it a bit, you know? So you're right. It could be that is like all the energy mixed in the grid, but basically the battery is trying to stabilize the grid to optimize their operation.
All right, thanks. And once again, just a quick translation for something you said earlier. You said during that period where you choose to just charge it with the renewables on site, you said it's protected by the EEG, so the German Renewables Energy Law, and by the Marktprämie. And Marktprämie just means it's like a go-to-market premium.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for this question. Basically, for making more potentially available hybrids PV plus battery, the German government invented this innovation auction that is saying you are entitled to the EEG plus a premium on the EEG that you can pay the battery addition. And then with this, we start like installing more hybrids because it was financially available. So the EEG and the Marktprämie are kind of like a protection for this kind of assets. And then the full potential to actually help the grid to operate properly. You can alternate between these two modes, right? And then before you could do it, but you have to change every year.
Now, that was not only a quick deep dive into hybrid power plants, but also into specific German laws. I know that you're also involved in projects in Canada, in Colombia, in Spain, even in Finland. So that's a lot of various different markets. What do you experience there? If you look into other European markets specifically, what business models for hybrid power plants do exist? Which ones are the most successful?
So I think like the wind plus battery in Canada is the most attractive. In Canada, you're experiencing a spread like that is reaching almost 700 euros per megawatt hour. So the injection of PV can only achieve 60 or maybe 80 if you have a PPA. But then the battery can charge from PV just like a LCOE of 40 euros per megawatt hour, and then making advantage of these high spreads that are constant during the year. And this is because how the other markets are established, right? So they have different particularities that make them unstable, that the batteries can help them to try to stabilize themselves. And the batteries using, in my opinion, using only renewable energy is what they aim for. But we also need to take care of the financials and the investors' health so that they can be secure that their asset can be paid during 20 years of time.
That was Canada. What about the other markets? Do they also have interesting concepts?
Canada is interesting. Finland is becoming interesting with auxiliary markets. That is, when you have certain level of renewable energy injected to a grid, you start unstabilizing the grid. You have a frequency problem. And then markets appear that they pay you per megawatt reserved and megawatt hour injected. And then the battery can play with these markets to try to stabilize the frequency in the grid in a green way, if you want to say it that way.
Now, all these markets, I guess, are very different, specifically in regards to legislation. But are there some general legislative challenges that still hinder the deployment of hybrid power systems? If so, what would they be?
I will say that one particular challenge here in Germany is like PV plus wind, right? So PV plus wind is another form of hybrid projects that can optimize the grid injection. So right now, for getting a permit, you need to sum the two technologies. But this is not necessarily. We generate with wind during the night and the morning and during the afternoon and the night. But PV is just mainly available at noon, right? So they both really complement each other pretty well. So if the regulation allows you to just apply for an injection point that is shared between the two technologies, you can use your electrical infrastructure more efficiently. So that's one. And the second one, I think, is the clarification of effective clean energy that the BNetzA has to release soon. So, for example, imagine the situation I was explaining before. The battery, the hybrid plant, is behaving between renewable energy and the grid. And renewable energy, if the PV wants to inject, is clean. So it should receive the EEG, right? And then this clarification is made with measurements in different points of the plant. But then the BNetzA is actually saying that they're going to release a specific way of measuring that we can use the protection of the EEG for just the PV in case you're in the mixed mode, for example, right? And this is a clarification. I don't see major challenges, but it's something that we're expectant to how the rules are going to apply, you know?
Once again, that was a specific German topic. The legislation in regards to combining wind and solar and having the same injection point, is that also a challenge in other markets?
I think like everyone in the markets are actually having the same problem. The more we apply for permits for renewable energy, the less points of injection we have, right? So the legislations and the regulations in different parts of Europe are actually betting for hybrid injection. PV plus battery, wind plus battery, PV plus wind, and all three combined. So Spain is a good example. Spain has a really good hybrid injection policy. The problem with Spain now is the injection points, how they're delivering them. But at least the political willingness, it exists because they realize that we can optimize our renewable injection in one single point.
And just given that permitting always is a huge problem and it takes long amounts of time to get systems actually connected to the grid. Just in the other episode that we recorded here with Rana Adib of REN21, she said they calculated there's around about 1,500 gigawatts of renewables available that simply are waiting to be connected to the national grids. And my point that I want to do is, of course, then if you can sum it up in hybrid projects, you just cut the permitting amount of bureaucracy by 2 or 3. So it just makes sense to put it all together.
I fully agree. Basically, that's why I'm really excited. I come from PV. I'm passionate about it. And I think it's the solution for most of the problems. But at some point, we have so much installed in several countries that we're just curtailing the peaks in the summer. And then in order to actually use the renewable energy more efficient and reach 80% or 90% renewable penetration, I think the hybrids are the solution.
Now, it sounded like there might be some technical obstacles as well for hybrid power systems, because you said, for example, Spain has problems in setting up all the injection points. Is that one of the key problems?
I think so. I think for hybrid particularly, I think this is a problem for all renewables in Spain. But I think for hybrids, I think the perception from investors, banks, and insurance companies is the key point that we're trying to tackle right now. We're learning as an industry. So they have done a fantastic job so far adapting to this large growth of hybrid solutions. And the conditions have improved a lot since we started doing it. But their process could be standardized a bit more to reach a complete adaptation of hybrid plants to the renewable energy environment. I think land clarification for PV and wind combined, there is a bit of problematic process in several countries in Europe, how you install wind and want to add PV or vice versa, right? So I will suggest to clarify and simplify the procedure also to the request for demand for the previous innovation projects. So imagine we start with the innovation in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And even now, we can think about the future projects to do this mix of demand from the grid. All the previous projects, they don't have this capability to charge from the grid with a battery. And that is key because the battery cannot access FCR market. If you clarify the request for demand in that single point of injection, you can free these older assets, the first of their kind in the German and the European grid.
All right. Also there, still some work to be done. Now, connecting PV and wind to the same storage system just makes perfect sense. Technically, is it just the same, or is wind more challenging than solar?
Wind is more challenging than solar. The environmental impact assessment is longer. And then additionally, is more expensive. Like solar is reaching lower values right now to install, but you need more land, right? And then wind projects take longer, but they're more expensive to connect. Basically, I think the combination of both of them, they can optimize a combined asset better. Wind is not present during summer that much, so you have a low factor level of use. And on the opposite, solar is using a lot of the injection point during summer. So in the majority of the locations that I have analyzed, they complement really well. So it's about how we started 25 years ago, right? We started with wind and solar as separate assets. They were seen as assets really risky at the beginning. And now all the industry understand this, right? And now imagine that we, the technical guys and the developers, are telling the industry that now we want to combine them. It takes time. Like we need to adapt to them and explain to them how they work and how we can optimize the process.
All right, I see. So it's also for the first time a PV engineer has to talk to a wind engineer.
That's exactly what's the main thing, that they, at the beginning, they didn't understand each other, but now is more they're understanding each other. They have the common goal, so why not?
Now, you're very enthusiastic about hybrid power plants, obviously. Are the markets just as enthusiastic, and what kind of development are you expecting in the coming years?
So I think like the wind plus battery, it could become interesting in some markets. And I think it's about to adapt to it, right? I think I would love to see a reduction of substation components. I think that's something that it will potentially like try to do it. And all the manufacturers of like substations or trafo, that they start thinking about these hybrid solutions so they can optimize their cost too, right? So I think the innovation auction should deliver clear rules for prices or incentives for a PV plus wind, for example, or a PV plus wind plus battery. That it should be a little higher than the just PV plus battery because of the higher cost of wind. I think this could be a game changer, this liberation, right? I think that the major challenge that I see in the future is electrification and EV charges right now. Because if we continue to electrify Europe to have like more charging points for heavy duty, heavy industries, it could happen that the load shape in Europe could change. Right now we have the famous dot curve. You have like a high demand in the morning, low demand in midday, and high demand in the afternoon. And with electrification for heavy trucks or heavy industries, this shift, this shape of the load, it can change. So hybrid assets can be better prepared to actually make supply that change in shape. And I think that's something really interesting. I'm really excited about it.
So that means effectively some of that peak could occur during night as well, because then maybe that's the moment where you charge your fleets, etc.
It could happen. And for example, in Canada, they're seeing this possible load change if they electrify the step that they are thinking about. And in Europe, we have that commitment, right? So we're trying to think about electrification now. And then now everyone in the industry is just used to this shape of energy. And we are operating all the assets, right? Renewables, gas, nuclear, etc., to try to adapt to this shape. And imagine that this shape disappears and is entirely different or unimaginable. Like it could create a challenge. And this is particularly where the batteries can help the grid, because the batteries are really fast reacting assets. So if you have renewable energy accumulated into this in microseconds, you just can adapt to what you need, you know?
Thanks a lot, really, Felipe, for joining us today and giving me an insight into hybrid energy systems. I don't think we actually covered that topic yet here in the Smarter E podcast, so that's really great. Now, it's still day one of the Smarter E Europe. As we speak, you have 2 days ahead of you. What do you think you can take away with you, and why would you come back in 2025?
This is my 7th year coming to Intersolar, so for me it's kind of like my favorite time of the year. We're all here together trying to solve the problem of renewables and how to advance together. So it's really great to be here and try to collaborate with all my colleagues. Even my competition is nice to have like these chats. So because we treat each other as like someone who are advancing to our common goals.
Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation. Have a nice day.
Make sure to also check out all the other episodes of our special mini-series recorded live here in Munich during the Smarter E Europe conference and exhibition. And even better, join us for the Smarter E Europe in 2025. More information on thesmartere.de. Looking forward to meeting you.